The time between the 1920s was called the Roarin' '20s, a time of advancement and lightheartedness. One of the major movements of this decade was music. It is said that the 1920s could be considered the jazz age, a time where most things were carefree and the economy was advancing. As well as the advancing economy, there was also a new style of music that emerged, also known as jazz, that consisted of ragged rhythms, syncopated melodies, and improvisation. It originated from African Americans in the southern part of the United States, specifically New Orleans. However, it began to spread across America, making its way to Chicago, where it was even more popular. There was a more soulful genre of music as well that occurred in the 1920s, the blues. The blues originated from African Americans as well, singing of classic themes such as poverty and oppression. African American artists began to take America like a storm. The Harlem Renaissance became so popular that African American arts received international fame, even caused a political transformation. The music allowed Americans to express how they felt free and how much fun they were having during the 20s through song. During the 1920s, it was important to have lots of fun and be more carefree.
Now when the saints go marching in, now when the saints go marching.
The Roaring '20s had many notable musicians that carried music such as jazz along. Examples included Louis Daniel Armstrong, who introduced jazz. Armstrong joined Joe King Oliver's band, the Hot Five, where they made popular recordings. After leaving to go solo, he became the first greatest cornet and trumpet soloist among jazz musicians. Duke Ellington, a composer and a musician, was also influenced by ragtime. He created his own style known as the Ellington style, which became popular in many hits during those days. Bessie Smith was a famous singer who sang the blues, performing in theaters in the South. She became one of the best jazz singers and even performed with Louis Armstrong and Benny Goodman. Paul Robinson was also a popular jazz singer and actor who also performed in theaters such as the Polo Theater. These figures have influenced and created jazz and blues, which are still popular today.
In the 1920s, jazz was broadcasted in theaters, radios, and clubs. Jazz represented how carefree and relaxed Americans were. There were also Broadway musicals, which were very popular amongst Americans. The reason why the jazz had spread was because people were migrating all over America looking for economic opportunities. Jazz was never the same thing. It was always changing and filled with improvisation and expression. Blues was extremely popular, singing of poverty and filled with soul. The music in the 1920s was never repetitive, and it was classy and filled with fun. Today, music is extremely repetitive. Some pop songs sound the same, and you will rarely find a song as soulful as the blues. Some songs today don't even make that much sense at all, and the most jazz you'll ever hear in your lifetime is when you're in an elevator and you hear the typical elevator music playing. However, since jazz is always changing, it is widely incorporated into present-day songs. There are still many jazz musicians out there, and many people who still appreciate jazz. Although the music in the 1920s has changed drastically compared to the present day, the music is still around and has impacted many musicians and people in America.